Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about globalization from two different interpretations, the sceptical and the globalist interpretation. These two are completely opposite, and in this video we want you to know about and understand them so that you can feel identified with one of them and reach your own reflection. But before we begin, you have to understand what globalization is. Globalization has an undeniable material aspect as far as it is possible to identify. Rather than more random encounters, globalization refers to this entrenchment and enduring patterns of worldwide interconnectedness. But the concept of globalization denotes much more than a stretching of social relationships and activities across regions and frontiers. For it suggests a growing magnitude of intensity of global flows such that states, societies become increasingly enmeshed in worldwide systems and networks of interaction.
Starting with the globalist vision, it rejects the claim that, as such, globalization is only an ideological or social construction, but actually encompasses many other components in the global world. It grants the same status to the other key dimensions of social relations, such as political, military, cultural, natural, etc., instead of just reducing globalization to a purely economic or technological logic, since that will be ignoring the other forces that shape modern societies and the world order. An important point to note about this explanation is that it reflects actual structural changes in the scale of modern social organization. This is explained in the growth of multinationals, world financial markets, the spread of popular culture, and the prominence of global environmental degradation, where the power of the nation state decreases by having this type of organizations such as the United Nations and the International Monetary Fund, or by social movements.
Globalist interpretation of globalization. Rather than trying to assess how contemporary global trends measure up to some abstract of modern globalized world, or simply comparing the magnitude of the global flows between the different epochs, to the globalist account draws on established socio-historical models of analysis. The globalist analysis dismisses the presumption of the globalization can be explained solely by the reference of the imperative capitalism or technology. Rather, it is considered a product of multiple forces, including economic, political, and technological imperatives, as well as specific confunctional factors such as the creation of the ancient Silk Road or the collapse of the state social needs. The globalist account invites an open-end conception of the global change rather than fixed or singular vision of a globalized world. To reduce globalization to a purely economic or technological logic, it is considered profoundly misleading since it ignores the inherent complexity of the forces that shape a modern societies or world order.
Nonetheless, a view of global transformation comprises a fundamental reconfiguration of the structuring principles of social life and world order, essential to this globalist interpretation. The globalist literature emphasizes the transformation of dominant patterns of socioeconomic organization, territorial principle, and power. Globalization allows for new modes of transnational social organization, such as global production networks and regulatory regimes, while also making communities in specific locations vulnerable to global conditions or developments. Another globalist discussion the importance of the region state rather than the nation state. Economic activities help to frame political issues. That is, the nation state is not successful at managing economic problems. The nation state is designed to deal with ethnic tensions, religious hatred, and political resentment.
On the other hand, we have the sceptical interpretation of globalization. From the point of view of the sceptical interpretation, the concept of global cannot be interpreted or assumed as a universal phenomenon. This theory recognizes that there is a growing interconnectedness. However, they argue that labeling this condition as a globalization is totally misleading, as these flows are more international and regional than global. Skeptics also argue that globalization is an exaggerated and superficial phenomenon that distracts attention from the primary forces which determine world politics, such as the state, power, geopolitics, nationalism, capitalism, and imperialism. Skeptics therefore conclude that globalization is an epiphenomenal, a derivative of more primary forces such as geopolitics or capitalism.
Many skeptics explain that instead of providing data on the forces shaping the modern world, the term globalization is primarily an ideological construct, an adequate myth that, to a certain extent, helps to justify and legitimize the universal neoliberal plan. That is, the construction of a universal independent market and the consolidation of Anglo-American capitalism in the main economic zones of the whole world. In this sense, the term globalization acts as a primordial myth, through which politicians and governments curse their inhabitants into complying with the demands of the universal market. Often associated with the skeptical position is a deep attachment to the Marxist or realist ontology. Classical Marxist research holds that capitalism as a social order has a pathological expansion logic because capital has to exploit new markets again and again to maintain income. To survive, national capitalism must always expand the geography of capital and social cooperation.
A strong devotion to either a fundamentally Marxist or a realist ontology is frequently connected with this skeptical viewpoint. As such, the present epoch is described by many Marxists not in terms of globalization but instead as a new mode of Western imperialism, dominated by the needs and requirements of finance capital within the world's major capitalist states. Realism too presents the existing international order as constituted primarily by and through the actions of the mightiest economically and militarily powerful states. Accordingly, the internalization of economic or social relations is argued to be contingent upon the policies and preferences of the great powers of the day since they only have sufficient military and economic muscle to create and maintain the conditions necessary for an open international order. As a result, many Marxists define the current epoch as a new kind of Western imperialism dominated by the interests and requirements of financial capital within the world's major capitalist states and rather as globalization.